A great introduction.
Excellent. John, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate this. In this new world that we live in, right? Virtual
It's
world.
crazy. It's crazy. And
Excellent.
heartbreaking.
Well, welcome again to our 2020 annual meeting of the Chicago Minority Supplier Diversity Council, Development Council. As you know, we have been engaged here in Chicago for a little over 50 years now, and really appreciate the certification, advocacy, connecting, and developing of minority businesses. And so I have a couple of questions that we've put together for you, and I'd love for you to just share some more insight into what you have and what you have going today. All right. So we'll start out. First question, entrepreneurship. We know that it has always been a go-to for the minority community to create these lifestyles and augment supplemental income. In today's environment of a heightened focus of supporting these businesses, what programs can we rally around and support to focus on driving these business formations in this new reality that the pandemic has caused?
Well, thank you. I think there's a couple of things we can all be doing together to create opportunities for African-American businesses to be successful. As we know, it's been a really tough time during this pandemic for Black businesses. We are often the smallest businesses. We're in the least profitable businesses where the margins are small and the growth rates have been slow. So it's hit us particularly hard. So what I tell people all the time, which I believe deeply in, one is we have to support our civil rights organizations that are committed to economic justice. You know, we know what Reverend Sharpton's doing with NAN to get doors open for African-American entrepreneurs. Of course, our hometown, Reverend Jackson, has done extraordinary work over the last 50 years or more to get opportunities for African-American businesses, and we need to support our civil rights organizations. You know, Mark Morial has done some terrific things at the National Urban League, and I think sometimes we find excuses not to write the checks, not to show up at their conventions, not to show up at their conferences, and we need to do more because they're the ones that are really forcing these doors open for us. And then secondly, we need to push for progressive political leaders. I think many of the audience are old enough to remember Harold Washington's leadership when he was the mayor of Chicago and how he fought for Black businesses, fought for minority businesses. You know, my personal hero was Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor of Atlanta, and really forced the Atlanta culture to shift and to change and embrace minority companies. And that's why Atlanta has such a strong middle class of African Americans today, is because of the leadership of Maynard Jackson. So we need to support these political candidates as they're doing great, great work and fighting for us. Today, I'm hopeful because in our Congress, it's the most progressive Congress we've ever had, more diversity than we've ever had in history. And when you have a Maxine Waters chairing the House Financial Services Committee, and Congresswoman Joyce Beatty chairing the Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion, they are fighting for economic justice and getting these doors open for us. So we need to support those types of political leaders that are, again, fighting for us each and every day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Those are some great insights there. And then I know this morning I read in the news that we did just recently lose Mayor David Dinkins of New York, another good advocate for businesses at the time. And I'm sure it's going to be, great with moving things forward.
Oh, exactly. You know, we did have a generation back then. You had Coleman Young in Detroit, and Marion Barry in Washington, Tom Bradley in LA. They understood that strong Black businesses made a difference, that we employed each other, we were role models for the next generation of leaders, and we created our own philanthropy. You know, you look at how generous the great leaders here in Chicago were, whether it was George Johnson with Afro Sheen and Ultra Sheen, or John Johnson with Ebony and Jet. They made a difference in so many ways that it's just sort of incalculable.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you for sharing that. So you and I have spoken in the past. You're also in the documentary Boss, the Black Experience in Business, where you talk about your grandfather, his experience with Black Wall Street, and then just that trajectory to now and where you are today. And I mentioned that because Ariel Investments has always been a thought leader in business diversity space. Can you share some initiatives that you and Ariel are conducting today that influences business diversity?
Sure. Well, thank you. One, I am fortunate. I've come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I have to mention that. My great grandfather had the Stratford Hotel in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that got burned down in the race riots of almost 100 years ago. But he was a real leader in that Tulsa community. His son, my grandfather, had his own law firm, was a pioneering lawyer, fighting against segregation and fighting for fairness and inclusion here in Chicago. And then my mom, Jewel Lofentant, was the first African-American woman to graduate from the University of Chicago Law School. And she had her own law practice. And she met my dad at the law school, where he was coming home after being a captain in World War II. And he'd been an original Tuskegee Airman. And so all these family members had their own companies. And so I got to see close up and firsthand what a privilege it is to be able to be your own boss and make a difference. And so, I grew up getting to go to their offices and seeing what they're doing and the difference they made. So when I started Ariel 38 years ago, I felt that we should try to do our best to support minority business. And a couple of things that we would talk about that have been really, I think, signature issues for us. Number one, we thought financial literacy was important. If we could get kids in public schools learning about the stock market, learning about investing, they would be preparing themselves for entrepreneurial careers. So 25 years ago, with the help of Arne Duncan, the former Secretary of Education, we started the Ariel Community Academy, which is a small public school, south side of Chicago, almost all African-American students. And we start the kids in kindergarten with a $20,000 class gift, where the kids get to watch us manage that pool of assets for the first 6 years. And along that time period, we talk to them about the stock market, teach them about how to do research on companies, have them come down to our offices and visit with our analysts. We go down to the school and answer any questions they have around research and picking stocks. And then in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, those young people get to pick real stocks with real money. And trying to emulate what my father did for me when he bought me stocks as a kid and let me get the benefits of the dividend checks. And it's really cool to see these kids putting their portfolios together, and we try to do things to enhance that experience. When Don Thompson was the CEO of McDonald's, we would take 40 kids every year to the McDonald's annual meeting, and they would watch Don preside. They'd get to ask a question, and then afterwards, Don and the chairman of the board, Andy McKenna, would spend an hour with the kids, talking about how he got to be CEO and how hard work could pay off. And they got to see a role model as an African-American CEO of one of the largest companies in the world. So that has worked out beautifully. When the kids graduate in 8th grade, they take $20,000 and give it back to the next first grade class. And they get to take a portion of the profits. And if they decide to put it into a 529 program, we match it with $500. So the kids are learning about the benefits of long-term investing, learning about the importance of matching so they're prepared for their first 401k plan. And hopefully it helps prepare them for entrepreneurial careers. We think that's important. The second signature program that we're really proud of is the Black Directors Conference that we started about 18 years ago with my friend Charles Tribbett, who was with Russell Reynolds. And we started just with 35 Black directors. And the mission was always been from the very beginning for us to not only network with each other, build trust and relationships with each other who are on corporate boards, but secondly, learn how to be leaders in the boardroom. And then third, how to learn to be comfortable fighting for economic justice and social justice once you get into that boardroom. My hypothesis being sometimes we get a little quiet and shy and get uncomfortable talking about these uncomfortable issues. Mm-hmm. So what we've done is that as the conference has grown from 35 to 200 directors from the largest public companies in the United States, from Apple to JP Morgan Chase, we not only have great CEOs come, we've had Don Thompson there and Ursula Burns and Ken Chenault. We always have, we have white CEOs from Jamie Dimon to Jeff Immelt to David Rubenstein and John Canning. We bring in a group. We've had entertainers there from, and celebrities from Magic Johnson to, music on Saturday night with Gladys Knight and Smokey Robinson. And we try to make it fun too, and it's been really cool. But the most important part of the conference is every Friday night, we have what we call the conscience of the conference speech. And over the years, it's been Harry Belafonte, it's been Spike Lee, it's been Congressman Andy Young, former mayor Andy Young, former ambassador. We've had Reverend Jackson, we've had Reverend Sharpton, we've had the late John Lewis. We've just had these extraordinary leaders. We've had Valerie Jarrett, President Obama, and they come and remind people that if you're in that boardroom, you have a responsibility to fight for our community. And to do what John Lewis said, if you see something that's not right, that's not just, you have a responsibility to speak up and fight for fairness and make good trouble. And what we've asked every director to do is to come back, and one of the 3 P's that we think is important, we have people, purchasing, and philanthropy. We want all companies, all of us that are on the boards of the companies that we're on the boards of, when we get back to our home base, to make sure that these companies are spending money across the board with Black-owned companies. And that these companies say they're doing a good job, but often these companies don't do much of anything, or also they're only in some of the lowest margins, smaller portions of the spend. And that's important, but we want to be included in all aspects of their economy. So we've asked our corporate leaders to get every company to keep track of the spending by every single category that that company spends money on, and to talk about professional and financial services and technology, as well as all of the other supply chain efforts that are also important. But we want to use the term what we use at the University of Chicago of business diversity to remind people that we want to be included in absolutely everything. So that's what we think can ultimately make the most difference, because we think if corporate leaders are fighting for economic opportunities for all of us, they're also going to be the same people sitting on their local hospital boards and university boards and museum boards and other places where they can have an impact on that spend also. So those are 2 things that Melody and I are really proud of at Ariel, that are hopefully moving the needle and making a difference for all of us as African-American entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I love how you coined the term, I'll say you coined the term there, business diversity. And so you're removing it from just that age-old usage of supplier diversity to where now it's inclusive of it all. That's really powerful. And I think
thank you. I wish I could take the credit, but Nadia Quarles at the University of Chicago really gets the credit. And as you know, there are now over 95 minority-owned companies doing business with the University of Chicago in professional services, up from basically 0 11 years ago, 12 years ago.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And Nadia is a great advocate here of the council too. So thank you for mentioning her there. I love too that you mentioned that their increase in doing work with more minority business enterprises, MBEs as we call them for short here with the council. Our MBEs, of course, are certified, they're vetted, they're proven, but a lot of them still have trouble obtaining these contracts with major corporations and some government entities. Is the system broken? What do you think?
I think that when it comes to the corporate world, it's pretty broken. And when it comes to the nonprofit world, the universities, hospitals, museums, again, it's entirely broken. So as we mentioned, the University of Chicago doing the right things, DePaul, Loyola, Roosevelt, Columbia, IIT, very, very difficult to get any business out of them, especially in professional or financial services or technology. Similarly, the museums. For the History Museum, does a good job, but the Art Institute, the Field Museum, the Aquarium, the Planetarium, basically only white folks can really apply for real, true economic opportunities to those institutions. And I was on a Zoom last week with Nadia and Reverend Sharpton, and one of the things we talked about is it time that we, as a people, come together and start to boycott some of these museums that don't do business with us. It's just not fair. It's just not right that they make it so difficult to do business. So I would argue that in a lot of places it's broken. The public sector does the best job. Corporations are in the middle, and the nonprofits are the worst. And what's so infuriating is they make these commitments to us. They show up at your conference, but often the people who are the decision makers are often don't have the ability to make change. And it's interesting that the CEOs will be talking a great game, making all these promises and all these commitments, but when it gets down to the decision makers, I always give one quick example of this. When I was on the Bank One board, Jamie Dimon was going on and on about the importance of diversity and inclusion. He was the CEO of the bank at the time. And so I decided, I called up the head of the credit card unit in Delaware, and I said, how much advertising are we doing with Black Enterprise and Ebony Magazine and Jet Magazine and advertisements on Black radio? They said, we're basically doing nothing. I said, I just came from a board meeting and the CEO says this is really important.
Yeah.
But the decision makers who are 3 or 4 levels down often don't get the message and probably have implicit bias, unconscious bias, people who don't believe truly in diversity and inclusion. Some of them are resentful of affirmative action programs. And if they can find a way to rope-a-dope it and just keep doing business with the people that look like them, that they're friends with, people on the higher ups are too busy sometimes to keep track of that.
Yeah.
So the system really truly is broken. And I'm hopeful, as I said, with this progressive political leadership that we have and civic leadership that we have, and maybe some people getting more and more awake after the George Floyd assassination, there's some hope out there.
Absolutely. I love it. And I love that you shared that it is a conversation that probably is just missed, because if it's not coming from the top down, they're not enforcing it, right?
Yeah,
So
it'll start at the top, but then when it gets to that next level, or 2 or 3 levels down,
yeah,
people can dodge it and duck it, and they realize the CEO's got a lot of other priorities, and he can keep doing business the way they always have.
yeah. No, that's a powerful message, and I think a lot of businesses should definitely take heed to that, because it is truly the only way that we can fix this, and that we can change and control this narrative too, on really what's happening with business diversity. I love that. Thank you so much. That brings us to Ariel Investments, your firm. The motto, of course, is slow and steady wins the race. I think that's even more relevant today with really what's happening in the marketplace, how we're handling the pandemic, how some companies are forced to pivot. What are some other words of advice that you'd offer minority business enterprises as well as corporations? I know that's kind of double-edged, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that Ariel Investments, of course, we're still working to build our small business. We are a tiny rounding error in this world where you have Vanguard and Fidelity that are multi-trillion-dollar firms. We manage about $13 billion, which sounds like a lot, but it's really, really tiny. So we're out here trying to get corporations to add us as an investment option in their 401k plan. From a small corporation to the largest corporation. That's something that we want to have a chance and an opportunity to have our funds there. It's just like at the grocery store. You can add one more soft drink brand. You don't have to fire anybody. You can just add us to the list. And that's something that we're committed to. I think the other thing, and coming back to the conference, I think all of us are in leadership roles, whether we're on a board of directors or you're a vice president somewhere. We have to be looking out for each other as the purchasing decisions are being made and the spending decisions are being made. I think too often we just are comfortable, letting it go the way it's always been going. And if it's not us, it's not going to change. We have to understand that and can live these values that I mentioned earlier from John Lewis, to say, I just saw on our website that our CEO says it's important that we work with minority-owned companies, and I see all these contracts coming through that are going to the traditional white firms. We're not living the values that our company stands for. And my father, as I mentioned earlier, was a Tuskegee Airman. He said the most important thing that you do is always live up to the commitments that you make to others. And so many of these institutions are making a commitment to us and not living those values. And it's up to us to call them on it. And then we can all rise together, and we can all help each other as we rise together.
I love it. Collective effort. But definitely, helping to move that needle together too and making that difference. That's phenomenal. That's really good. Really good.
And last thing I'll say on that too, I think we have to spike out the institutions that are doing great work. Exelon, under Bill Von Haney's leadership, is probably the most progressive company in the country of not only keeping track of all the spending by category. I used to meet with the late Emmett Vaughn, and we'd go through every spend in Exelon once a year. But they kept track of it by race, by sex, and again, by category. And I could talk to Emmett and Bill and say, hey, we're not spending enough with Black advertising agencies. We got to do better next year. And Exelon just does that beautifully. And they also keep track of the diversity of the teams of the outside white firms that work with Exelon. So they hire an investment banking firm or a law firm. They keep track of the diversity of those teams, bank, insurance company, whatever. And Bill holds those folks accountable. And that's been a wonderful story at Exelon. And then finally, a lot of you know, McDonald's has probably created more millionaires over the last 50 years than any other institution except the NFL and the NBA. You know, we know so many of the wonderful, you know, started with Brooks sausages to Baldwin Richardson ice cream, just all these wonderful businesses that have been created that are now some of the largest Black businesses in the country. They got their start with McDonald's, who gave them that first important customer that led them to be able to grow into really large national enterprises.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned those strategic partners that are also good fans here of the council. Exelon, McDonald's definitely have been engaged with us. I too look to Emmett Vaughn as a mentor in the past, you know, and really valued the things that he shared. And I think he's done a lot for supplier diversity or business diversity, if you will, when he was with us here. So I'd love to continue that and keep that going here at the council. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'd also like to mention that we here at the council have looked into adding the Aerial Investment Fund to the offerings that our employees are able to take advantage of in our 401. It's as simple as just offering, right?
All you have to do, most of the major providers, Fidelity or Vanguard, we have relationships with, so we can be seamlessly added to any 401k plan. Most of the major insurance companies, Charles Schwab, et cetera, we're on their platforms already. So it just has to have the customer ask. I had a friend who's got an insurance company, does her defined contribution plan, and she's a teacher at Evanston High School. And they were making all these excuses about why they didn't have one Black fund option for the employees. Well, she got many of the Black teachers together and said, this is inconsistent with our values. And now the insurance company that provides their defined contribution plan is going to add Aerial Fund as an option. Because the employees are asking and reminding them that, you know, Evanston's a minority city. Why wouldn't you have a fund like Aerial's in one of the options? You've got 20 options, have a 21st option.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. And I love that we could share that with, you know, all of the attendees today in this virtual world, that it is as simple as just making that change. And I think that's the best way to support not only organizations like yours, but a lot of other professional services and things that are out there in the minority and business diversity realm, if you will. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have one last question, and I'd love to position it in that I have taken over now as one of the new leaders, if you will, coming in with some fresh ideas and innovative ideas. Is there some words of encouragement that you offer for these change agents today, and how we can continue to make a difference in really how, you know, as a Black male, how individuals are seeing us, how corporations are seeing us, and really how we can, again, control business diversity going forward?
Well, I think when we met and talked recently, we got off the phone and I talked to my colleague Malik, and we just talked about what a terrific new leader you are, and the breath of fresh air you're bringing, and it was wonderful to the conversation that we had, and inspired me. I think what we just have to do is, when we have the kind of inspired leadership that you're bringing, is to coordinate with the other basically civil rights organizations so that we can all be on message together. I think sometimes we all have our own messages, people using different terminology. We need to be on message together. And as I said earlier, we have to get our political elected officials to understand, because we have some great progressive state senators and state reps, aldermen, others, congressional leaders here in Illinois who want to do the right things. They believe in Harold Washington and his mission, but they've got to be reminded, because it's so easy now to get swept up with climate change and healthcare reform and all the other challenges that we have in our society. But if we don't have strong businesses, we don't have wealth in our community, which comes from strong businesses and jobs. If we don't have that, we're going to get worse healthcare. We're going to be in segregated communities with poorer housing, poorer schools, poorer healthcare. If we're wealthier, we'll be able to do better in all these key areas that we confront, that challenge our society because of historical racism that we faced. So your role is more important. You can make such a difference for our community. We've got to be a team. We all have to be in this together. Political leaders, community leaders, business leaders, fighting the same battle. And then we'll be able to make a change for all of us and our kids and our grandkids.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for that. I tell you, it's refreshing to speak with you, to constantly hear. I am truly that E.F. Hutton when it comes to and listening to your words of encouragement, support. It's valued, it's appreciated. And then in closing, is there anything you'd love to share with our audience of stakeholders, of corporations, of MBEs? I know, again, this has been some challenging times for a lot of companies, but as we pivot, I always try and share that, you know, particularly Black businesses too, we are resilient. We can get through this. And I know that there's going to be some changing in administration and things like that we're really looking forward to. But any last words of encouragement or something that you'd love for us to take away from this great fireside chat?
Well, thank you. I mean, the things that I stay on message are really two things. And one we've talked a lot about already today, that this term business diversity we think is important because the economy has become a more professional financial services and technology-based economy. We have to evolve with the world as it evolves and become a 21st century terminology. The second one we haven't talked about, many well-meaning people think that you solve the problem for Black businesses by giving us more access to capital. We do need access to capital, that's for sure. I went to friends and family to start my business, but we all need access to customers, because as much as that early capital was important, the most important thing was when the former treasurer of the city, Cecil Partee, got the city to give us $1 million to manage out of their pension fund. It made all the difference because I had a new client and I could tell others, gosh, the city of Chicago hired me, now you guys should hire me too. So we need access to customers as much as we need access to capital. And I think that gets lost by many well-meaning people. And just as a final reminder, Dr. King always says many progressive white Americans always believed that they were against prejudice and deplored prejudice, but they accept and ignore economic injustice. We have to remind people that we have to be full participants in our capitalist democracy.
I love it. Thank you. Wow. Very, very powerful. I appreciate it. Outstanding. John Rogers, thank you so much. Continued success with this. Happy holidays to you and your family and things there. And I hope to continue listening and being a part of everything that we can do to control this narrative of how business diversity is taken here in America.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.